Alright, hey, with the win, here to do a quick map review on Splinter. Sorry, I have to alt-tab to make sure I get all the names, which is made by Eidolon, Scythe, Pont, and Sacrius. I'm gonna assume that's how you pronounce it. So I wanted to do a quick review on this map, doing it verbally because if I do it by text, I'll never manage to ever finish in time. So apologies if this is quite scattered. I'm just trying to get some of my thoughts down and hopefully give some advice and insight that helps the map develop. Because I think this is a really cool, aggressive concept. I say aggressive because the idea of balancing one asymmetric Koth map is already quite intimidating. And then taking that with four different ones is something I would say I would never have the bravery to do. So very, I think, impressive initiative at the very first part. But I would say overall, I don't know if it's the concept or the geometry, but this map isn't fully appealing to me. I think one of the main issues with the geometry is there's not a lot of way to have awareness beyond kind of like face checking, and I think a lot of the raw geo isn't very, I would say, cost friendly in terms of like back and forth friendly. So I didn't really check, but if I remember correctly, the respawn timers are quite typical for Koth. Like I would say 12 for the attacking team, and then 20-ish for the defending team. But just because those respawn timers exist doesn't fix, I would say, um, the kind of like core death ball aspect of Koth. So Pub Koth struggles a lot with this problem where once one of the team owns the point, they're already kind of like established all the respawners mass off essentially on the point and in the area surrounding the point, right? And then as an attacking team, the team that doesn't own the point, if you have a shorter respawn wave, that can actually spread out your team. Even though it's applying pressure, it can spread out your team because everyone isn't spawning together. And unfortunately for this map, I think one of the main problems with a lot of the points is once one of the teams is entrenched on the point, the access routes into the point become very difficult. But I'll go over one thing at a time. There's a lot of points, so forgive me if I accidentally skip one or I end up um, not really explaining any thoughts. Feel free to reach out to me after this video if any of the things I say make sense or were too confusing and you want elaboration. I'm definitely willing to have a discussion over that because I really like the concept and I want to develop it more. But essentially, for this first point, I mentioned my main problem with it would be what I call face checking, where essentially, if I'm a player here, when's the first indication I have that there is, let's say, a pyro around this corner, right? Not really until they cross the corner. And I think this is like really, maybe if I go back here visually, right, you can see, you know, feel slow. Uh, right here, no vision across, no vision across, no vision across. I don't really know if there's someone around this corner until I actually round the corner, right? Now, I'm not saying, oh, the entire map should be free vision, but this gets very awkward with how many sharp corners maybe there are on this map. Like, how do I know a player's right there? I don't really until I round the corner and they're in my face, or they could be jumping around this corner in my face without me even knowing. Like I see a player there, but they jump across this way. So I really expect there to be some kind of like better visualization to know where people are, where it's very awkward for me to ever like push spaces because maybe it's the distance between each space is like very compact and very tight. And I also think it's relatively easy to get behind if you want to. Well, that'll come through later parts. But I just think this point and the second point are both quite weird because they're like, I would say, traditional Koth maps, except if the point was uh, not where it belongs, somewhere where it shouldn't be, which I think was one of the cards, so maybe that's intentional. But essentially, for this point, there's no reason to ever stand down here before you've essentially cleared all this space outside. You might say, oh, but the cap sign is objective, you get like 5 extra seconds. But then, if they kill your team and they kill you, all those players have like a 10-second long respawn, you actually hurt your team by capping instead. For the most part, the point is like the one spot I wouldn't want to stand. I absolutely wouldn't want to stand on a map like this. So it's very interesting for this point in particular where it's positioned, where it doesn't really feed into the main combat. I mentioned before a little bit of it being easy to get behind. That's the main rollout. I don't think, clipping. I don't think a lot of people would ever come this way around. There's a medium health pack that I can even retreat back to. So I can harass players who are going that way, primarily, right? And then if I get damaged, I can even grab a health pack leaving, which is very, very commonplace on this map, like hyper enabling flankers in I think a very bad destructive way. Kind of have that same element. Oh, same element here. You have players fighting here. Player can come up, flank, and then grab health back while leaving. Very safe and very annoying, I'd say. So trying to enable a little bit more visualization into those flankers I think would help. but I'm not sure how much you can do with that because you're still dealing with geometry that's going to be used in like 3 more spaces over. So let's go this way instead. Talk about the indoor point. So, same idea here, where I think there's no real reason to cap the point before you own any of the other space, but it's also very hard to know what they have on the other side of this like big wall, and peeking it isn't really realistic. I also think it's quite awkward. This foreground side, this side with the medium health pack, doesn't really have a rotation route into the high ground at all. So you just kind of have to like awkwardly walk all the way around. So I feel very second class as a non-mobile class, I'd say very limited in kind of like my rotation options and how to get back up to this ground. Besides that, did not see a lot of gameplay happening on these outer sides at all, and the very long kind of like slight lines to spawn I think also don't really help. They make it kind of easy to just like harass in into this space in particular. But pretty much all the feedback I said before stands for this point. I think it's difficult to visualize, and you would want to stand anywhere that isn't the point. Where are we going now? Sorry, I lost track of my sides. No, I went the other way. So this way, yeah, here we go. So same thing here. There's like routes onto the point. This point in particular reminds me of an arena design. By that I mean none of the combat is actually centralized around the point. There's a lot of routes to get, on the point. There's a lot of routes to get around the point. This, going over the roof, skips the point entirely, leads directly into kind of like flanking combat, right? This underground route, you can harass the point from it, but you can also use it to just flank people who are trying to push the point right here, trying to like mass up and push right there, right? And then this outer route here is completely kind of like stealth moded, and then drops down on people on the point, and drops down people here. And this is where I said I really think the map struggles with considering the fact that if someone wins the point in Koth, their team has players alive, the other team doesn't have players alive, presumably, they're going to essentially entrench, they're going to fortify. And this isn't a good example because, I mean, I'm a sniper, come on. But lack of cover there, lack of cover there, lack of cover there, just indicated that there's no real way to set up here because the flanks all go behind it, right? So where is the attacking team actually supposed to mass push from? Because if they stand on the open, they're going to get spammed to hell. If they stand right here, they're going to get flanked by sharp corners and people dropping down above them, behind them, and around them. So in the end, it makes it a very, I would say, miserable pushing experience, even with a better spawn time, because you have these players kind of coming out of nowhere. I think there was some feedback in playtests that's like, oh wow, Pyro's so strong. A large element of that is because you don't really have this clear indication of, I expect enemies to come from this way, I am fully protected from players coming like behind me. That's never true with routes like these that come behind and then drop down behind you while you're trying to fight someone on the point. A lot of people want to feel comfortable in this idea that enemies come forward in this like 90-degree cone, and that just isn't true in areas on this map. This was one of the most, I would say, offensive points for me, because as an attacking team, I felt like that route and this route both feed into this tiny choke here. Am I looking at the right area? Sorry, getting used to like different spawns, because this was open before. Yeah, so this exposed area, no cover, sharp angle, right? And it's also left-handed, so I can't really peek it as a soldier very easily, right? And then constantly getting flanked by players who see that tension there. This route is free because they own the point. They'll come in, that's the spawn, they're like underneath it, stealth moded, and they harass players here, and then they leave, and while leaving, they have a medium health pack near the spawn. This only favors teams entrenched on the point. So in this way, I think it very much doesn't understand this element of Koth where you really want to favor the players attacking to the point. The space between the point and the spawn should be favored towards the side that is a spawn. I'm sure that's very difficult to balance in an asymmetrical map, but I think that's one of the main keys that needs to be focused on, even above, I think, like making like super aggressive spawn times, trying to angle the geometry and even some of the health packs in a way that favors the attacking team and not the harassing team with flankers who harass the flank and then go back, grab a pack, and then repeat and do it again. That just enables this sort of sustained harass feedback loop. So hopefully that helped. A very short video. Just wanted to get some of my thoughts out on paper. I think it's a really cool idea, but I have a really hard time imagining how much effort it must take to kind of iron out all the details and refine it to a point where all the points are really comfortable and there won't be at least some frustrations. But best of luck. I really am looking forward to seeing how the map develops. And yeah, I think that's it.